Imagine walking through life surrounded by noise, faces, and conversations, yet feeling an invisible wall separating you from it all. Think of the paradox of modern existence. Millions of connections, yet so many people feel deeply alone. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to have no friends? Not because they are unworthy, but because something within them operates differently. In this video, we will uncover the psychology behind people who walk alone, drawing upon the profound insights of Carl-Jung, one of the greatest minds in analytical psychology. By the end, you'll understand not only why some souls travel without companions, but also what hidden strength lies in solitude. And stay until the end, because the final revelation may completely change how you see yourself and the people around you. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. You're about to discover truths that could reshape your understanding of human connection, self-awareness, and the mysterious nature of solitude. Now let's dive into the mind of the one who understood the shadows of the human soul better than anyone else, Carl Jung. Jung believed that the human psyche is a vast landscape filled with archetypes, symbols, and hidden forces. He saw solitude not as an accident of life, but as an invitation to inner discovery. To him, isolation was often a symptom of deep transformation, a stage of psychological individuation, when a person begins to awaken from collective patterns and seek authenticity. Think about it. Society teaches us that having many friends equals happiness, but what if some people are simply wired to walk a different path? What if solitude, rather than being a curse, is a sign of evolution? Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming one's true self. He wrote that many people remain trapped in what he called the persona, the social mask we wear to fit in, to be accepted, to be liked. Those who have no friends are often the ones who have begun to question that mask. They start to detach from superficial connections because their soul demands something real, something meaningful. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But to do that, one must often walk away from the crowd. The road to self-realization is rarely crowded because it leads inward. People who have few or no friends are not always victims of circumstance. Sometimes they are soul pioneers, exploring the deeper dimensions of existence that ordinary conversation cannot reach. They may feel disconnected because they are tuned to different frequencies, those of introspection, thought, and truth. Psychologically, this can be linked to what Jung called the introverted type, individuals who draw energy from the inner world of ideas and reflection rather than from social interaction. Introversion is not shyness. It's a preference for meaning over noise, for depth over company. These people often find socializing draining because it pulls them away from their center, their inner dialogue. But here's the paradox. While their solitude helps them grow inwardly, it can also make them misunderstood. Society tends to glorify extroversion, the ability to mingle, to charm, to be visible. Yet Jung warned that when we suppress our true temperament to conform, we create a shadow within us, a part of the psyche filled with resentment, confusion, and repressed energy. Those who embrace their solitude, instead of fighting it, are often the ones who integrate their shadow and find real peace. Ask yourself, have you ever felt more alive when you were alone than when surrounded by people? Have you ever sensed that solitude wasn't emptiness, but rather a sacred space where your mind could breathe? Jung believed that every individual must confront their own inner loneliness to truly awaken. He compared this to a descent into the unconscious, a meeting with the self, the divine core within. When we stop running from solitude, it becomes a mirror that reflects who we are beneath all the masks. People with no friends often live in this reflective space. They are not necessarily broken or antisocial. Many are simply seeking a level of authenticity the world rarely offers. They crave conversations that touch the soul, not the surface. They long for connections that are real, not performative. And until they find such resonance, they prefer silence to noise. In many cases, their loneliness is not a lack, it's a rite of passage. Like the alchemists Jung studied, they are undergoing a transformation from lead into gold. The isolation, the introspection, the silence, it all serves a purpose, to purify the self, to separate illusion from essence. But solitude, while powerful, can also be dangerous if misunderstood. Jung warned that those who dwell too long in their inner world without balance risk losing touch with reality. The same mind that can illuminate the soul can also imprison it. Thus, the challenge is to turn solitude into wisdom, not withdrawal. As we continue, we'll explore what happens inside the psyche of those who live without close friendships, how early experiences, personality types, and spiritual development intertwine to shape this path, and why Jung saw this condition as both a burden and a gift. To understand the psychology of people who have no friends, we must first recognize that loneliness is not always the absence of others. It is the absence of resonance. Carl-Jung often spoke of the human need for wholeness, not merely connection. He believed that until a person learns to reconcile the opposing forces within themselves, their light and shadow, they cannot form truly deep relationships with others, because what we fail to integrate within, we unconsciously project outward. Imagine a person who has always felt different. Maybe they grew up sensing things others didn't notice, subtle emotional undercurrents, hidden motives, or the falseness behind certain social rituals. Over time, these sensitivities may have made them withdraw, not because they disliked people, but because they could see through them. They felt alienated, not out of arrogance, but from an inner knowing that the ordinary exchanges of the world could not satisfy their soul. Carl Jung observed that many individuals who walk alone are those whose consciousness has begun to evolve beyond collective conditioning. The collective mind, what Jung called the collective unconscious, is the shared pool of symbols, beliefs, and instincts that binds humanity. Most people live comfortably within it, following its norms without question. But the moment someone begins to awaken, when they start asking, "Who am I really?" or "What is the purpose of my life?" they often find themselves stepping outside the crowd, and that step can be profoundly isolating. Psychologically, this marks the beginning of individuation. It is a sacred separation, but it feels like loss. Friends drift away. Conversations that once felt fulfilling now seem shallow. The things that once provided belonging now feel like cages. This loneliness, Jung would say, is the birth pain of the self. People who have no friends are sometimes undergoing this transformation without realizing it. They might feel like they are broken, when in fact they are being reborn. Jung compared this to the archetype of the hermit, the wise figure who retreats from society not out of bitterness, but to seek truth. In ancient myths, every hero must enter solitude before transformation. Moses ascended the mountain alone. Buddha sat beneath the tree alone. Christ went into the desert alone. Solitude, in this sense, is not exile, it is initiation. However, Jung also warned that some forms of isolation stem from unresolved wounds. For example, individuals who experienced rejection or emotional neglect early in life may internalize the belief that they are unworthy of love. Their solitude becomes a defense mechanism, a wall built to prevent further pain. They begin to equate distance with safety. This unconscious pattern can make them avoid intimacy even when they crave it. Here lies the paradox Jung explored. The same walls that protect us also imprison us. When we close ourselves off to avoid being hurt, we also close ourselves off from love, friendship, and understanding. Jung emphasized that the path to healing requires consciousness, becoming aware of why we choose solitude and what lies beneath it. Is your solitude a sanctuary or a shield? That question is worth asking, because the difference determines whether it will lead you to self-realization or despair. Many who have no friends are not antisocial, they are simply cautious. Their inner world is so vivid, so complex, that most relationships feel intrusive. They value emotional depth and honesty, but modern social dynamics often reward superficiality. Jung might say they live in conflict with the persona, the mask society demands, and their true essence, which seeks authenticity. Every time they suppress their real thoughts or feelings to fit in, they feel an inner split. The loneliness that follows is not a failure. It's a signal that their soul is asking for integrity. Interestingly, Jung's theory of psychological types, introversion and extroversion, helps explain why some people thrive alone. Introverts, Jung said, are oriented toward the subject, the inner world of thought and reflection, while extroverts are oriented toward the object, the external world of people and activity. When introverts try to force themselves into extroverted behavior for too long, their psyche rebels. They feel drained, anxious, and disconnected, So withdrawal becomes a way to restore psychological balance. But Jung never saw solitude as an end. He believed that once the inner world is explored, it must eventually reconnect with the outer one. He wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. To grow fully, one must risk this contact even after being burned by it. The key, Jung taught, is integration, to find harmony between solitude and connection, independence and intimacy. People who have no friends may be living in the extreme of self-containment. They guard their energy fiercely, but without meaningful relationships, parts of their psyche remain untested, unmirrored. Others act as mirrors that show us who we are and who we are not. Without them, self-knowledge can become distorted. So how can solitude become strength instead of suffering? Jung would say it depends on whether you use your aloneness consciously. If you use it to deepen your understanding, to listen to the voice within, it becomes your teacher. But if you use it to hide, it becomes your jailer. Ask yourself, are you using solitude to escape or to evolve? Are you alone because you cannot connect or because you are learning what real connection means? In the next section, we'll explore how Jung viewed the lonely path as a spiritual calling, how those who have no friends might actually be living through one of the most sacred processes of psychological awakening, and how to transform isolation into illumination. Carl Jung believed that human beings are not only psychological creatures, but also profoundly spiritual ones. To him, the psyche was not just a collection of thoughts and emotions, it was a sacred vessel through which the divine sought expression. He often said that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to achieve that, one must often face the desert of solitude. For Jung, solitude was not emptiness, it was the silence before revelation. He observed that the people who feel most alienated from society are often those whose souls are undergoing transformation. They are being separated from the collective to discover something uniquely their own. In a world obsessed with fitting in, this journey can look like failure. But spiritually, it is often a sign of awakening. Let us imagine such a person, someone who sits alone in a cafe, watching others laugh and connect. On the surface, it may look like isolation, but inside a profound process is unfolding. Their mind is sifting through layers of illusion, asking, what is real connection? What do I truly seek from others? In this silent questioning, their consciousness expands. They begin to understand that true friendship cannot come from conformity. It must arise from authenticity. Jung compared this stage of life to the archetype of the wanderer or the seeker. These are individuals who step away from the village, the tribe or the crowd, not because they despise it, but because they sense there is more to life than its rules. They seek meaning rather than comfort, depth rather than popularity, and often they must travel alone until they find others who vibrate at the same frequency of understanding. People who have no friends often live in this in-between world. They are not fully detached from humanity, but neither are they content to follow it blindly. Their loneliness, Jung would say, is a form of initiation, a cleansing of the false self. Through this, they learn the difference between company and connection, attention and understanding, noise and presence. However, this journey is not easy. The mind can play tricks during solitude. Without the reflection of others, the ego sometimes expands, believing it is superior or uniquely misunderstood. Jung warned that this spiritual pride is one of the great dangers of isolation. When someone believes they are above ordinary people, they fall into the trap of inflation, a state where the ego mistakes itself for the self. The true self, Jung said, is humble, grounded, and compassionate. It does not separate itself from others, but sees the divine in everyone, even in those who still sleep. Therefore, solitude must be guided by awareness. It must lead to empathy, not arrogance. Jung's concept of the shadow plays a crucial role here. The shadow represents everything we deny or reject in ourselves, our anger, envy, fear, or weakness. When we are alone, the shadow rises to the surface. It confronts us. People who spend long periods without friends often face their shadow more intensely than those distracted by social life. That confrontation can be painful but necessary, for only by integrating the shadow can one achieve true wholeness. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Those who walk alone are often doing precisely that. They are meeting their darkness, learning its language and transforming it into light. Their solitude becomes a laboratory of the soul. But Jung never romanticized isolation. He understood that humans are wired for connection. The goal, therefore, is not to reject society, but to engage with it consciously. Once the individual understands who they are, they can return to others from a place of strength rather than need. This is what Jung called the return to the collective, the stage when the individuated person brings their newfound wisdom back into the world. People who have no friends often hover on the threshold of this return. They have grown so accustomed to solitude that they fear re-entry. They worry that others will not understand them, that society will corrupt the peace they found alone. Yet Jung believed that the completion of individuation requires relationship. We do not know ourselves fully until we see our reflection in another human being. Relationships are the mirror through which consciousness completes its circle. Ask yourself, have you ever withdrawn from others to find yourself, only to realize that part of your growth still depended on learning to love them again? That paradox is the essence of Jung's psychology. The soul must first find its own voice, but eventually it must harmonize with the symphony of humanity. Jung's insights were ahead of their time, yet they resonate deeply today. In an age of constant connection, more people than ever feel isolated. Digital friendships, he might say, often lack the alchemical reaction that transforms souls. True friendship, like individuation, requires vulnerability, silence, and authenticity. It is not about quantity, but resonance. Perhaps those who have no friends are being called to redefine friendship itself, to seek not people to pass time with, but souls who share time meaningfully, to move from social noise to spiritual connection, to build relationships not from loneliness, but from completeness. In the end, Jung's teachings suggest that the path of solitude is not a punishment, but a pilgrimage. It strips away illusions, heals old wounds, and teaches the sacred art of being alone without feeling lonely. Only when one has mastered this art can they truly love others without attachment, expectation, or fear. In the next and final part, we'll explore how to transform Jungian solitude into empowerment, how those who have no friends can use their isolation as a force for creativity, wisdom, and inner peace. We'll uncover why Jung believed that the loneliest people often carry the greatest potential for awakening, and how their solitude can become a gift not only for themselves, but for the world. Carl-Jung once said, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living. Talking is often a torment for me, and I need many days of silence to recover from the futility of words." In that confession, he revealed something profound. Solitude, when embraced consciously, becomes medicine, but when misunderstood, it turns into poison. The difference lies in awareness. People who have no friends often stand at this very crossroads. Their aloneness can either crush them or awaken them. Jung's work teaches that transformation begins when we stop asking, "Why am I alone?" and begin asking, "What is this solitude trying to teach me?" Every psychological symptom, Jung said, is a message from the unconscious, a signal pointing toward growth. Loneliness is no exception. It is the psyche's way of inviting us inward, toward deeper self-understanding. When we listen, we uncover the parts of ourselves we have ignored, the inner child longing for safety, the artist yearning for expression, the thinker seeking truth. In silence, these forgotten aspects finally have room to speak. To Jung, the journey through loneliness mirrors the ancient alchemical process of transformation. First comes dissolution, then purification, and finally, rebirth. The old identity must dissolve. The false self, the persona, melts away. What remains is the raw essence of who we truly are. This inner purification may feel painful, but it clears the path for genuine connection, creativity, and wisdom. Those who have no friends often carry extraordinary creative potential. Cut off from external noise, they develop a rich inner dialogue, a sensitivity to symbols, dreams, and intuition. Jung believed this inner world is not fantasy. It is the language of the soul. Many great thinkers, writers, and mystics were solitary, precisely because their imagination demanded quiet. Solitude became their workshop. Yet Jung warned that inner richness must eventually find outer expression. Otherwise, the energy stagnates and turns into melancholy. The psyche seeks balance between introversion and extroversion, between reflection and participation. A flower blooms not to hide its beauty, but to share it. Likewise, those who live alone too long must eventually share what they have discovered in their solitude, the insights, the compassion, the creative fire. So how can one turn solitude into empowerment? Jung might answer, by making it conscious. Begin by observing your aloneness without judgment. Instead of seeing it as emptiness, see it as space where your authentic self can breathe. Notice what thoughts arise in silence, what feelings you avoid, what truths you long to express. Write them down. Meditate on them. This is how you transform isolation into insight. Next, seek to understand your shadow. Ask, what parts of myself have I exiled? Do I fear rejection so deeply that I reject others first? Do I secretly believe I am unworthy of love? When you face these questions with honesty, something miraculous happens. The walls begin to crumble, compassion flows inward, and with it comes the ability to connect authentically. Jung believed that healing always begins with self-acceptance. The person who befriends their own soul no longer depends on the approval of others. Paradoxically, it is only then that genuine friendships become possible. You stop reaching out from need and start relating from wholeness. People who have no friends often think they must fix themselves to be worthy of connection. Jung would disagree. He would say, you are not broken, you are unfinished. The loneliness you feel is the space where something new is being born, an expanded consciousness, a stronger identity, a clearer sense of meaning. When you walk alone, you begin to see things others overlook, the subtle beauty in silence, the lessons in pain, the divine patterns hidden in everyday life. Solitude becomes a lens that sharpens perception. You start to realize that friendship is not limited to people. You can befriend nature, art, music, your own thoughts, even life itself. Eventually, those who master solitude discover a profound truth. The goal was never to escape loneliness, but to integrate it. Loneliness is the doorway through which the self enters. When you walk through it consciously, it leads to inner peace, a peace that no crowd can offer and no absence can destroy. And then, almost paradoxically, true friends begin to appear, not because you chased them, but because your energy has changed. You attract souls who recognize your authenticity, who are drawn not to your mask, but to your essence. These are the friendships Jung would call psychic unions, connections born from depth rather than need. Perhaps that is the ultimate message Jung left us, that solitude and connection are not opposites but stages of the same journey. First, we separate from others to find ourselves. Then, we return to them with new eyes and an open heart. The one who has learned to be alone no longer fears loneliness. They carry their center within them, unshakable, radiant, whole. So, if you are someone who has few or no friends, remember this. Your path may be lonely, but it is not meaningless. You are walking the ancient road of individuation, the road of the soul's awakening. The silence that surrounds you is not punishment, it is preparation. Within it, life is shaping you into someone capable of seeing what most people never see, feeling what most people never feel, and understanding what most people never understand. When you emerge from this solitude, you will not be the same. You will speak less, but mean more. You will love fewer people but love them more deeply, and you will carry a kind of peace that no crowd can give and no absence can take away. In the end, as Jung might remind us, the person who has learned to be at peace in solitude is never truly alone, because once you find yourself, you have found the greatest companion of all. Thanks for looking.